The profound beauty of Miyazaki's worlds are rarely understated, his natural worlds especially, in all their grandeur, whimsy, and vivid detail, draw from a deep well of both historical and imaginative sources that have allowed him to produce a style that's instantly recognizable as his. But as beautiful as they are, they're almost always served to audiences within a larger context of the political ugliness ingrained into the fabric of his writing and world building. Their profundity and naturalistic beauty is offset against war-torn backdrops, imperialism and fascist movements, and rampant capitalism and human over-industrialization that all threaten to destroy or upend the balance between humankind and the natural world as we know it. It's here we witness Miyazaki's true calling card, not just exposing audiences to the beauty of heightened natural worlds imbued with an extra layer of spirituality, but exposing the audience to internal and external conflicts between the natural world and the ever-encroaching human industrial one. One of his best films that explores this just so happens to be his first film, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. In the film, the titular character Nausicaa serves as the bridge between these two warring worlds, the naturalistic one, the Sea of Decay and its monsters that threaten human life on the planet, and the human industrial one, still clinging on to vestiges of power, no longer the dominant species in this world, reeling from ecological collapse and devastation. She takes on this role as the blue-clad one, a prophesized hero reborn, and uses her supernatural power to save humanity, bring balance back to these two disparate worlds. This is the basis of eco-fabulism, a storytelling ethos that marries the history of fable storytelling structure and mythological messaging within the thematic dressing of combating ecological catastrophes. The oft-studied adverse dynamic of humanity overcoming the evils of some natural inhuman force is told through the lens of saviors and salvation. The solution to ecological collapse is found in figures also containing otherworldly, inhuman kinds of power. Nausicaa embodies this in every facet, from her preternatural affinity for the forest to her headstrong nature in the face of would-be monstrosities. In the end, she's able to reintroduce this human-non-human balance, push to the wayside overly violent human forces, and usher in a new era of utopian peace. But what we quickly discover about eco-fabulism and its messianic framing is that as much as these stories bring comfort in the promises of salvation, their idealistic viewpoints so often crumble in the face of taking those lessons and applying them to our own world. Far be it from me to attempt to find lasting lessons about combating ecological collapse in a children's film, but as the apocalyptic undoing in her world mirrors exacerbated disasters of our own world, as well as Miyazaki's own affinity for these types of stories, the disconnect between lesson and action is a feeling in Miyazaki films that can't help but fully consume you at a certain point, especially in a world with no Nausicaa-like savior on the horizon. This kind of nihilistic reading finds even more credence in Nausicaa's manga editions. Continuing the legacy of the film, the first 200 pages, or 2 issues, follow the film's narrative almost to a T. But as the book expands, with several issues published after the film's release date, it grew darker and more ominous, inviting a welcome complexity that reveals just how much utopian fantasies can critically fail us. The manga does this clearly by blurring the lines between humanity and nature. Rather than pit themselves against one another in rigid distinctions that fabulist stories so often rely on to derive meaning, what is human and non-human becomes increasingly hard to decipher. This is where eco-fabulism, with all of its faults, gives way to the eco-gothic. The Gothic is a force known in both Western and Eastern contexts that utilizes elements relating to death, decay, and horror to take their stories to even more grotesque lengths. The eco-gothic adds the extra wrinkle of studying this grotesqueness under the umbrella of naturalistic symbiotic relationships, ones that turn from surface-level comparisons of humankind and the natural world around them to a deeper, far more existential kind of dread on a species-to-species level, one concerned with mutations, grotesque human, non-human body horror, and extinction of entire civilizations. It's within the eco-gothic audiences are made to reconsider the role of environments, species, and non-human entities. what we understand as negative or antagonistic forces personified through a growingly hostile natural world in the eco-gothic can't so easily be dispersed or reasoned with by a savior like Nausicaa, and moreover, their existence so often becomes intrinsically linked to our own. In the manga, this is added to the text through extra dreary context that complicates the relationships between human and non-humans, or nature. The Sea of Decay, this antagonistic force that lashes out against humankind in the film, is revealed to be a man-made creation that those who came before created with the hopes of purifying the earth and its pollution. Furthermore, at this point in time, humans have been altered to live in this toxic environment, and so a pure Earth that the Sea of Decay seeks would be an Earth uninhabitable for Nausicaa and her fellow humans. These details muddy what was once a story about salvation and selfless saviors into one of further horror and existential danger. The world that was once waiting to be saved is now a world without a future, emphasizing the futile task of saving the world in the face of compounding ecological catastrophes. More than simply adding color to Nausicaa's story, the manga, through layering on darker themes, serves to unshackle us from the fantasies of the film and the easy solutions it provides to complex ecological problems, based in a more naive utopianism. It does this by holding on to the rich Gothic history and movements of the past that inform its more nihilistic worldview concerning the battle of good and evil on an ecological level. The Gothic, after all, was a cross-cultural phenomenon in both Europe and Eastern Asian contexts. They were movements born out of imperialist anxieties and distorting aspects of their respective dominant religions, Christianity and Buddhism. This is where you get Gothic explorations on occult otherization, taboo erotic manifestations, and a heightened interest in the supernatural and disturbing. They broke from social and religious norms in radical ways, shaping both national identity and the culture around the aesthetics of death, decay, and suffering. As dark as Nausicaa becomes, it gains poetic beauty in this meditation on horror born of the Gothic. By attaching itself to Eastern Gothic, in stark contrast to the Western fascination with battles against singular evils, Nausicaa's manga forces us to discover the undivided world of good and evil that exists all around us at all times. And it does this by disenchanting its audiences from the mythos concerning saviors. The antagonists reveal themselves not as the forest or nature, nor even the human imperialists, but as the forces of old humanity, the idols, vestiges, and symbols of the past directly in the way of forward progress. In Nausicaa refusing this role of prophetess, she allows the people to shape their own destiny, granting them a full-bodied awareness of both self and nature that can only come from the eco-gothic, from understanding a darkness inherent to the world and its interconnected natural web of systems that we are all a part of. Rather than fight this darkness or cast antagonistic shadows over it that take the form of fabulistic storytelling, Nausicaa asks us to embrace this inherent darkness, not to the point of nihilism, but to the point of realism. Realism that exists in the constant cyclical, millennium-long struggle that has been fighting against our own extinction. In destroying that hold that mythos and fabulism has over our worldviews, we more readily prepare ourselves for the brutal task of not just imagining a better world, but putting it into practice through a path divorced from utopianism that embraces the eco-gothic, the space where suffering and sacredness meet, where hope becomes radically transformed from the fickle promises we place in the hands of saviors to the all-consuming force of love that emerges from the darkness. Mind Theater is a solo effort produced and written by me, Aoaking Bade. For only $3 a month, you could support the show on Patreon. It really helps a lot. The link is in the description box below. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.
We have been friends, and you respect my dad and I respect you, but I will put fucking bullets right through your heart. You put that fucking gun down now.
God damn you, Joe. Don't make me do this.
Larry, stop pointing that fucking gun at my dad!